in those painful moments, it's like, Lord, I don't really have much to give right now, but these tears, and be okay with that. I'm still submitting to the process. And a lot of us need to learn how to submit to the process. So we got our roots, we identify our roots, and then we learn to submit to the process. Hello, lifters and listeners. Welcome back to the Lift Her Up podcast. I am your host, Latrice. Listen, we are full steam ahead in this new season of ours. So make sure if you are over on YouTube that you are liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel, and that you leave those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you listen. And make sure that you subscribe to my email list. That link is in the description as well. I'm so glad you all tuned in today. Listen, so a couple weeks ago, my first episode for this season, I got a comment from a young lady just asking about my process of what I did while I was trying to get closer to God in this past season, while I was telling you about the restlessness that I was experiencing. So I wanted to spend some time this episode talking about that process a little bit, some things I had to do, some things I think that a lot of us need to take from it. If God has been calling you into a season of rest or quietness, stillness, whatever that may be, or if you are suffering from some sort of worrying or overthinking. So I wanted to use this just to address her question, because I feel like a lot of us have been in that position. So if you have been experiencing some sort of fatigue, overthinking, worrying, God is calling you to just lay it down, focus on Him. What did I do? What do we need to do? The most important thing, the first thing we need to do is look at our habits. Our habits tell us a lot about our actions, our behaviors, and a lot about our thoughts as well. So our habits oftentimes have roots. They all have roots. And when I think about overthinking and worrying, especially for me, overthinking is a sort of protective mechanism that we have, a defense mechanism. And worrying is our way of trying to fixate on a thing or a person or a future that we may not have immediate control over. So oftentimes we start to feel a fatigue set in because we are worrying and thinking about things that we should not be, and because we are literally carrying a weight that God has not designed for us to carry. So the first thing we have to do is trace our habits. Look at the roots. Look at the things that you're doing. Think about what you are thinking about. What am I overthinking about? What am I worrying about? Is it money, your job? Is it your career, your family, finances? Is it purpose? Lord, what is my purpose? Am I walking in my purpose? Am I walking according to your will? Like, what is it for you? And I can attest that for me, it is many of those things. Specifically for me, it was the juggling of multiple roles, of multiple responsibilities. It was a lot of fear I was having of, okay, God, like, you called me to do this thing, you told me to do this thing, but I don't know how. Or I'm feeling overwhelmed with thinking about me having to walk this out. So a lot of it came back to fear of doing a particular thing. I'm scared. I don't know how to fully do this. I need help, right? So the root for me came down to fear and trust. So when we think about fear and trust, we have to then trace, well, what is essential to building those things that God is requiring of me? And for me, it was faith, surrender, and intimacy. So what did I do to help build and cultivate those things, faith, surrender, and intimacy? I learned how to just submit to the process. It was difficult. It was not easy. I feel like I have to make sure I say that, whatever it entailed. So I started by looking within and being like, okay, I see a deficit here. What can help me to bridge the gap with those things? So I noticed that a change was needed. I just didn't know how to carry out the change. So I made sure that I did things that aligned me to what I believe God was needing of me in that season. So I started a new therapy journey. I started to recommit to journaling. I actually have my journal right here, y'all. Journaling has saved my life in the past and in my present as well. But I began to recommit to journaling, doing it more regularly to get my thoughts out, to get my experiences out, and also the things that God was speaking to me as well, things that I would learn, just so I wouldn't stay up here. So, with overthinking and worrying, a lot of what we think and sense and feel, it all gets trapped in our minds, and the enemy will have a field day with that. So a lot of getting my thoughts out on paper, getting them down, my processes helped me to like think dump somewhere. So it's like, okay, if I just get all this out, then I can finally fixate and focus on what it is God may be trying to say to me, because sometimes we can't determine what are our thoughts from God's thoughts, right? So me getting everything down on paper allowed for me to be like, okay, these are Latrice's thoughts, and this is what God is saying. And I could trace, all right, that's a worrisome thing. And I know God wouldn't ask me to worry about anything. So I was able to get a lot more clarity when I started to journal. And that, accompanied with my new therapy journey, helped me a bunch. Also, when I would have moments of confrontation where God would confront me with something that I had been doing, a behavior, a heart issue, heart posture, whatever that may be, instead of running from it, I actually tried to sit with the emotion. I didn't try to dismiss it, even though it was a very hard truth for me in the time. Um, and that's a big thing for me, because if you've been around the channel a lot, then you will know a big thing for me is I can get in these seasons of just going and going and going and not feeling what I need to feel. So when God would confront me with things, I would be like, okay, this is hard. Now let me just sit with this and learn how to deal with it in the best way that I can. And in those moments, God showed me my control issues. Honestly, I thought, again, going back to that first episode, I thought I kind of like got it under control. I'm like, okay, Lord, like I'm good with releasing and surrendering and submitting and all the things. And no, like not so. Not so, not so. The Lord was like, there's still these things that you're holding on to that you need to let go. And I had to be honest. I had to be truthful about why I was holding on and not wanting to let go, like where my need and my desire to control things came from. And to be honest, like those moments are some of the most difficult ones that I've had to go through. And still, to this day, in this season, those hard truths, those moments, that letting go, that shedding of old mindsets, it is the hardest thing for me to do. And in this season, I have not cried more like than I have in this season to God, just sitting with him in my time with the Lord. I've not cried more, I think, than I have in this season. And it it's hard, y'all. I don't want to escape from the hard work that it takes, but it still is so rewarding. And I need us to get that as well. As hard as it is rewarding, but it does come with submission. So that is what submission looked like for me. Sometimes that means picking up my journal and just journaling out all of my thoughts, just dumping it all out so that I can gain clarity in what God is asking of me. And in those painful moments, it's like, Lord, I don't really have much to give right now but these tears, and be okay with that. I'm still submitting to the process. And a lot of us need to learn how to submit to the process. So we got our roots, we identify our roots, and then we learn to submit to the process. You have to sit with God for yourself, whatever that may be, and you have to inquire of Him about what He is requiring of you in that season, whatever it may be. And whatever it is that He asks you to do, you have to submit to that process. As painful as it is, as uncertain as you may feel, you have to submit to it. I've also learned that the pain that we feel in these seasons is because many of us don't know how to submit to that pain. We don't know how to submit to the process, or we don't want to submit to the process. So we buck up against the system that God is trying to create, against the new thing that He's trying to create. Like, we're like, no, we pull against Him, we restrain, we fight against God in those times. And while I was thinking about this, brace for impact just kept running through my spirit, like brace for impact, brace for impact, brace for impact. And I was like, Lord, like what is that? Like, I know what it is, but why are you telling me this in regards to this story here, in regards to this advice here? And brace for impact. So, like, if obviously if you've been in a car, a plane, a train, any mode of transportation, then the term brace for impact is for, in the event that you're in an accident or some sort of collision, you brace yourself. There is literally a position that a bracing that we do in order to help prevent more injuries to our body. And it can help to alleviate certain, injuries that may happen, possible potential injuries. And the Lord was telling me that many of us brace in our relationship with Him. Many of us brace in our mental, emotional, spiritual, relationally. We do it. We brace at life instead of just living it. Many of us carry that physical bracing into the other realms of our life. We think like, okay, if maybe I just brace myself a bit, then I can somehow prevent a worse outcome from happening. Or maybe I can protect myself from further hurt and harm and heartbreak and whatever else from this person, from God sometimes, if I could just do that, then it won't feel as bad. Then it won't be as bad. Still carrying on that false protective mechanism, because we should know at this point that God is ultimately our number one protector, and whatever He does for us is for our good, whatever it may be. Even though it may hurt in the moment, it's always going to work out for our good when you are a believer in Him. So we have to get out of that mindset that we have to brace ourselves against what God is doing in our lives and in our systems. Because if you've ever been in a car accident, every time bracing, we think that it's going to help us, but really sometimes it could do you more damage than good. Because if you've ever been in an accident, you've experienced that pain, even if it's like a little fender bender. It doesn't have to be some huge accident, but this soreness starts to creep into your muscles, right? Like muscles you didn't even realize that you had. This pain, it's this heat that starts radiating from your joints, and it could be the smallest accident. And oftentimes, that pain that we feel is not just from the impact of the accident itself. No, that pain comes from the tension that we have put our body into. We are bracing literally for the impact. So a lot of the pain and the soreness we feel, that residual, is from the bracing. So imagine us doing that relationally with God, spiritually with God, emotionally blocking Him off, bracing ourselves. We're putting ourselves in a more sore position when God is like, if you just let go off that thing, then this wouldn't be as painful as you think it may be. Like, you're hurting yourself more. You're doing more damage to yourself. So we have to just let go, submit, surrender to the process. Again, it's okay in a physical sense. Yes, brace yourself. That is for your protection physically. But with God, we don't have to worry about bracing for impact because he's always going to catch us. Um, we think that falling is failure, but every time it's not. Every time it is not. Sometimes a fall is just a fall, but we have to trust that God has a safety net for us and that he is with us even when we fall, right? So if you are bracing from God's order in your process, again, you may be causing more damage to yourself than you realize ultimately. So we identify the root and we stay submitted to the process. There will be moments of uncertainty and doubt because God, what you doing? I don't know, but that's part of the process. That is the faith building component. You have to get to know what God is doing for you. Sometimes it's built through faith, and whatever that looks like Lord, I don't know exactly what you're doing, but I'm going to trust it anyway. I'm going to walk it out anyway. Do something different. So if you haven't heard from him or you feel like it's been stagnant, do something that you've never done before. Again, I sought a therapist, another therapist, because I had gone through a therapy journey before. So I started to do that. I started to get tools from that. I'm like, okay, well, Lord, I haven't been getting my thoughts out the way that I should. Let me pick back up journaling. That was a tool that was helpful for me in a previous season that I had stopped doing. Let me start back doing that. And it's been refreshing for me getting back into that space. So whatever it is, uncertainty or not, like use the tools that God has readily available to you. Again, submit to the process anyway. And that brings me to this other point, accountability. We need to develop accountability in forms of safe counsel. Only a handful of people really knew what was going on with me and this whole season that God had me in, but I had a safe place to land. I utilized my therapist, my best friend, my boyfriend, primarily. They're the only ones that knew what was going on. And that helped me to stay encouraged in my journey. No pun intended, right? But they encouraged me in my journey. They told me to take time for myself, to self-care in the midst of everything that God was doing. They helped me to stay aligned. They also affirmed me. So it's like, hey, like you're on the right track, keep going, but still holding me accountable to the fact that, hey, you can't turn around, right? Like you can't go backwards. You can't do it. You still have to move forward. So the affirmation is important from the people that love and support us and actually know who we are. But also you need people in your corner that are like, hey, good job. Keep it up. Keep going. So that way, even if you do try to make a pivot and turn back around, they can be like, no, keep going forward. That is not the way for you. So that is very important. We need wise counsel in our lives, a safe counsel as well that we can share our life journey with as we go along, because the Lord tells us that we are not to do life alone. It's not good for man to be alone. And it is uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable, but we have to continue to do it. So that is why accountability is necessary, because if it's up to us, if it's up to humans, then we're going to turn around at any given point and be like, okay, Lord, I'm out of it. I'm out of it. But I've learned that even in the moments where we want to turn around and we want to back down from the new thing that God may be doing in us, through us, with us, there's really no way backwards, y'all. Like either you choose to stop or you choose to keep going. That's what I've learned, because we have a sense, we have a knowing, like the Holy Spirit that works in us will have a tell us that a shift is coming, that we need to shift somewhere, that we need to grow in a certain area. And once we've been exposed to that thing, y'all, like you can't unsee it. Once you see something, you cannot unsee it. There will always be this unsettling feeling in you that's like, this isn't right here. This doesn't feel good here. There's more. I have to do something different. I can't continue to hang out with those people. I can't continue to do life like this. I can't continue to be in this position here. I have to do something different and more. And again, the backwards thinking, you could try to go backwards, but it will never feel the same. It will never feel the same. I promise you. I promise you. So either you choose to move forward or you choose to stay still and just plateau out. And like I said before, like cool. Like you wanna do that? Go ahead. Do it all on your all by yourself. You have to maintain at that level though. You have to maintain at that level and God will allow you to stay at that level. But if you want to go and do more, then you should go with God. You should go with God. If you want Him to sustain you, you should go with Him. You really should. So I hope that's helpful. The main thing, again, is to trace your roots, trace your habits, and to submit to the process, whatever that may be. Get accountability. Get alone with God. Get in a quiet place with Him to where you can only hear Him. Thought dump so that you can know, hey, what is God and what is me? What is the enemy? Because sometimes he will throw thoughts in there as well. And we need to be able to discern and decipher what's happening and what God may be wanting us to do in the future. It's best that you go with the shift that God is trying to do instead of fighting against it. It's best that you do not brace from God and embrace from the changes that He's trying to do in your life, because it can cause you more damage. And then you'll be looking at God like, Lord, why did you forsake me? What did you do? And the Lord is like, I didn't do that. I gave you a warning. I told you beforehand a shift was happening. And when the shift started, you tried to restrain against me what I was doing. No, no, no. No, no, no. We can't blame it on God when we are the ones that are trying to fight against Him. So we have to learn how to, again, submit to the process, whatever it may be. We have to do these things in order to do whatever and be whatever and wherever God has called us to do, be, see, do, etc., etc. So I hope that's helpful to the young lady who asked me that question. Thank you so much. And really to anyone who feels that they are in a place where God is calling them maybe into stillness and rest, what that looks like, to focus on Him, how they can more so do that. Whatever season that He may be calling you in right now, I hope that's helpful. I really hope that's helpful. It is a time and space right now where we have to be more attuned with God than ever before. So I pray that that gives some sort of insight to how God can work in your life and in your journey as you go along with Him. So I'm trying to do a bit more reflective questions with my episodes just for you to think about. So I got two questions for you, just two things for you to think about. Have you ever found yourself bracing against God's process, trying to protect yourself, but feeling even more worn out in the end? That's been me, for sure, for sure. And the second one is, what's some area in your life where you've been struggling with overthinking, worrying, and with trusting God completely? I would love for you to reflect on that and leave me a comment. Let me know. I know some areas for me is definitely family. Um, Definitely purpose in my job and what that looks like, because it's like, Lord, I've never walked this out before, but pioneering is not easy, so those are definitely areas that I continue to lay at His feet, I should say, as I walk through this journey. And I would love to know your thoughts as well. What are some areas that you're struggling with in terms of that in your journey? Have you found yourself bracing against the process that God is doing? Where has that gotten you? And no shade, no tea, but if you know that God has told you to do something and you've been fighting against it, I know it hasn't gotten you very far. Like, and that's with all love and honesty. Because if you know that the Lord has told you to do something and you ain't done it, what you doing, sis? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing, man? But I love you guys. Please make sure you leave those comments. Let me know how you feeling. below. And yeah, I'll be praying with you and for you. Make sure you subscribe to that email list. Some very, very, very special things are coming up, you guys. I'm so excited to unveil them. And until next time, remember to stay encouraged. Bye.